Chapter 1 Butt Swatting. It was one of those lazy Sundays where it's still early enough that the anxiety towards Monday hasn't reared out its ugly head yet, and minutes lazily stretched out into long, blissful moments. Eddie was splayed out on the couch with a laptop, mindlessly watching an old artsy movie with glazed eyes, moving a muscle only occasionally to swat a cat's butt down if it went too close to his face. The film was an unusual break from his typical Western fantasy, science fiction, and superhero movies, or the occasional anime. It was a unique Hungarian picture from the 80s that looked like an oil painting came alive. It depicted a story of a young man who always dreamed of being a knight, but finally becoming one, he quickly grew disillusioned, faced with the ugliness of war. A weight on Eddie's chest shifted slightly, grabbing his attention, and started to purr. Another weight, which kept his legs warm, purred in response. The former then let out a series of short chirps, voicing its displeasure that petting has ceased for too long. Eddie obliged, and soon the cat closed its eyes again and relaxed. All of the problems of his personal and professional life were paused for these few precious early hours. There was no radio or TV that invaded his space with constant news of wars, corruption, disease outbreaks, or fatal accidents. The typical Central European city around his rented apartment was mostly silent, aside from a few cars passing by every now and then. On Sundays, especially the early hours, everyone obeyed the unwritten rules. No vacuuming took place, no loud music tore through the silence, no screaming children were running in the yards distracted by movies about dragons, princesses, and trolls. Everything was calm and perfect. Both cats, exactly at the same time, opened their eyes and scanned around as if looking for something. One of them, a black and white smaller male called Bo, looked somewhere to the street through tall balcony windows. The other, named Joe, fully black except for a white tuft of fur on the middle of her chest, looked outside the living room and towards the door to the apartment. Soon after, a very low sound rolled through the neighborhood, as if something very heavy thumped into the ground. It took a few seconds for Eddie's brain to register the noise. It was immediately dismissed, put into the category of not my problem, and filed somewhere into the void between his brain cells. Shortly after, his attention was fully grabbed, however, when the cats both hissed, jumped down from the couch, and hid somewhere in the room. Suddenly remembering the strange sound, Eddie got up and walked towards the small balcony, wanting to investigate its source. As soon as he pulled on the door handle, a gust of air whooshed into the room. It smelled clean and sweet, nothing like the stale, polluted air of the city that he was used to. The balcony was separated from the neighboring apartments on all sides with walls. It resembled a small room with one of the walls torn out and a railing put into its place. A net was stretched floor to ceiling, preventing the cats from escaping, as the apartment was placed on the ground floor. Even though it was almost summer, Halloween decorations were still hung up on the netting, small black cats, witches, and goblins, a testament towards Eddie's laziness. The field of vision on the street was limited, additionally obscured by a few tall trees growing right outside the balcony on a belt of greenery. Since the net prevented him from leaning out, he did the next best thing he could think of as he pressed his face against it, pushing as far as he could without tearing the whole thing down. He couldn't see anything out of place, but the unusually clean air somehow felt wrong. For a few seconds, looking like a complete idiot with the net pressed taut against his face, with a small green goblin right in the middle of his forehead, he tried looking around as best as he could. Not seeing anything particularly interesting, aside from beautifully blooming flowers on his neighbor's balcony, He tried to rely on his ears instead. It was silent. Too silent, in fact. There was no rumbling of car engines, no tires screeching in the distance, not even a hum of AC units or electrical transformers. He couldn't see any cars on the street at the moment, but there was a larger two-lane road nearby which generated a constant noise even on Sundays. The stillness felt unnatural, almost unnerving. Maybe it was just a fluke? A short-lived respite from the constant hum and din of modern civilization? He strained his ears for a little longer, but all he was able to hear was a singular shout from somewhere around the corner, a mother calling her child to get inside. He then noticed that the old neon sign, which was always illuminating the display window of a bakery on the other side of the street, was out. Did they turn it off for the first time since opening business? Or maybe it finally gave out, after what had to be at least 20 to 30 years since it was put there. Most businesses were closed on Sundays, and there was no movement in or around the bakery. Eddie decided that while the situation was peculiar, the silence and fresh air were quite welcome as he stepped back inside, leaving the balcony door ajar to let some more air in. Glancing towards his laptop, he saw it was still on, so it wasn't a power outage. That, while rare, still happened at least once a year. As he was about to plant himself back onto the couch, another peculiar scent wandered into his nostrils from the outside. It was faint, but still unpleasant, and for a few seconds Eddie had to search his memory for what it was. Sulfur. Maybe someone lit a match just underneath his balcony, but who still used matches? Some old-timer in a trilby hat smoking a rolled cigarette? Or maybe a pipe even? His mind started to wander towards a scene of an old man wearing a tall pointy hat rolling through blissful green hills towards a small village on a horse-drawn cart. Knock knock.